If you clicked on this video, chances are they might be. Here's a few things that might help you out. We'll start out with prep. If your prep doesn't look like that, if you can't see yourself in your iron, your prep is junk. Let's start right there. Okay, so TIG, it's really important to have clean material. Get rid of the scale, grind up all the mill scale, wire wheel, brush any grease or any debris off of there. The reason is you use argon for a shielding. It doesn't have the flux to help clean that puddle out. It doesn't have that aggressive arc that does a lot of digging. It's kind of a shallow weld, so you have to have that material clean. As I said before, you got to have it clean, and I prefer mine shiny. It's a direct reflection of what your work's going to look like when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see that, but you see that chunk of garbage in front of me and them little sparks flying around. That's that torch trying to cut through that garbage, and it just doesn't have it. See how that puddle doesn't want to work for me either. You got to kind of sit on that, and it's got to burn through that scale. Once you get her going, it might start, but you see all that garbage floating around in that puddle? That's not normal. That's not what you want. You see that blue turn on there? That means there's garbage in there.
Now, hopefully you can notice a TIG weld should be really, really clean. Nice clean edges, nice defined ripples in there. And there really should be no garbage on there whatsoever, no slag, there's no flux on the rod. I mean, it should be ready to weld over the top of when you're done with that first pass. Our next most important part of this is the argon, your shielding gas. Like I said before, this wire doesn't have any flux on it to protect that weld when you're burning it. So you rely on a gas, inert gas, argon or helium. That's why it's named Heliarc. If you listen to some old timers, they'll call it Heliarc. We just call it TIG now. But anyways, most TIG torches come with a little valve right here. You twist that, and that turns that argon on. And if you look up there on our gauge, you see that little ball floating around there. See, if I turn it off, the ball falls. That's how we know how much gas to put through there. Usually 15 to 30 CFH or whatever will do you. If you're out in the atmosphere like most pipe welders, you can crank that stuff up to really counteract the wind. But I'm going to show you what happens when you don't have argon. Little tip of the day. Most welders who do a lot of TIGging, you'll see them turn their gas on and then they'll put that up to their ear. What they're doing is listening to it and they're feeling it on their ear to make sure their argon's on. Most guys will do it more than once because it's a bummer when you start it up without argon. Ready, honey? I'm ready if you're ready. What it looks like to have a clean plate, right? We got the right argon, should be another clean weld. I'm going to put one right next to this guy with argon on, and we'll jump over next to it without argon on, and that sucks. Let's say you're in a hurry and you get to weld and you don't check your argon and you just pull up to it. This is what it's going to look and sound like.
Oh, I don't even want to do this. Ready? I'm ready. Holy crap!
That's no argon. And that will get your tungsten too. That little fiasco brings us to our next one, dirty tungsten. It is super important to have a clean tungsten. After starting off without your gas and it burns your tungsten up, you can weld with it, but it isn't going to be quite as nice. I'll ding that tungsten up a little bit more so you can see what it looks like when it's super dirty. So now we know what a clean tungsten looks like, right? Let's get dirty.
Okay, I'm going to try to mess this tungsten up, so give me just a sec. See, after you burn it up, it'll work okay. You see how that arc dances around? That shouldn't be doing that. So, let's say we're rolling along here. Now, this is on purpose, so any of you negative nannies out there, I know how to weld. I'm just trying to show you how to do it. So, let's see, you dip your tungsten, you get a little bit of shit on there, a little bit of stuff on there. Now, look at the color of that arc. It turns blue instead of white. That's how you know you got something on there. Dip it again, just dip it again, dip it again. And if you can see, the edge of that tungsten's getting kind of round and my puddle's getting kind of choppy. I can't get the edges of my toe line to tie in. Dip it again. Let's really get that sucker dirty.
So if you can notice, right down here, this is the same heat that I ran this weld in with the clean tungsten. That dirty tungsten, look at them toe lines, are just garbage. You can't keep it straight and your weaves are really narrow. That arc on that tungsten is just not stable. It's not real sharp. Take a look at that. You can see that balled up iron on there. Anybody who's TIG welded a lot, you know a good tungsten is key to your good weld. I always grind both sides of my tungsten so I can just flip it over, but sometimes you get it so dirty it won't fit back in your torch, which I'm afraid might happen on this one. Oh, we didn't get it that dirty. Next one's your heat. So the next issue you might be having is the heat you're set at. You might be too hot, you might be too cold. And I'll turn one down super low with the 1/8 inch wire and super high with an 1/8 inch wire. Most of the time you judge your heat by your wire size. 1/8 inch wire can run anywhere from 95 amps to 120 amps depending on your talent, your technique. So we'll start out with the low amperage, with the low heat. See what it looks like.
So the first thing you notice is how small that puddle is. It's going to take me a minute to get it warm enough to get my wire melted down. Yeah, and see that wire barely wanting to move around now. For you do-it-yourselfers at home, you might not know how to manage this. I do. I've had to deal with it before, so I know how slow to go. But if you're walking that cup and that puddle is not following you around, you might be too cold. But you'll see how I struggled to get that puddle to push over there to the edges. I got to go super slow for this thing to do anything for me. And I'm pretty certain I'm getting lack of fusion under that wire. See that puddle just barely stretching out there for me. It's going to look really good, but it's not going to be very sound. It might not be tied in right underneath that weld.
Always clip the dirty end of your wire off. There's a tip of the day. You always want to start with a clean wire. Okay, now let's maxine this thing. Let's go 200. We're setting at 200 amps maxine for this remote. We could go to 300, but I don't want to do that. Too much for this wire. Ready, camera dudes?
Yes, sir.
We're going to start right off the end of this cold weld here. It's going to get pretty wild here in a minute. I'll be able to handle it, but you guys at home, good luck. Ready?
Yep.
See that big old long puddle there? Now you really got to... That's super hot right there. I'm probably using too small a cup for that. And again, it's going to end up looking pretty good, but I've handled it before. You guys at home, unless you just want to see what it's like.
It's always good to try new stuff, but just know that it's gonna fight with you. And if you're not proficient at TIG, you're not gonna be able to move fast enough to keep up with that puddle. That's 200 amps on an 1/8 inch tungsten and an 1/8 inch TIG wire. I think probably the #1 issue people will have is gonna be arc length. I might be wrong, but I think it's gonna be the worst looking weld. I'll have the right heat, I'll have my gas on, we'll have a sharp tungsten, we'll have clean plate. If that arc length is off, it's going to be terrible. And I'm going to show you. So I got my machine unplugged, so don't blink. I won't strike an arc, I don't think. Normally, your tungsten's down there about a 32nd, maybe a 16th off the top of that puddle, and you're walking along, right? After people dip their tungsten a couple times, they get a little gun shy. And so they start picking that tungsten up like this. And you can see I can fit my wire underneath there. That's over an 1/8 inch. When you start doing that, you got your wire out in front, it shoots that flame straight out there and up your wire, and it won't tie into the plate. This is going to be the worst issue you can have. You got to really practice on keeping that arc tight. If any of this helped you out, that's about everything that can go wrong when you're TIGging on plate. If you'd like to take your TIG weld and do another level though, hit us again. We'll move on to pipe and I'll show you where it gets really technical. Remember, like, subscribe, hit the bell, follow us on all our socials. Come see what we're all about. See you on the next weld.